If you're watching today's episode on YouTube and aren't subscribed, make sure and click the subscribe button, like, comment, and let us know what you think about the episode. If you want to stay up to date on the latest in diesel news, parts, products, reviews, stories, that's the best way to do it. There's a lot of traffic that we get from viewers who aren't subscribed and they're missing out on the content. So make sure you're not one of those people. Click the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you get the latest stuff right away. Today I'm going to be chatting with a listener who has a passion for manual diesel trucks, and I know that that's a really popular platform. It was really a dark day when the big three went away from offering manual transmissions. So I wanted to talk to him about his truck, some other trucks he has experience with, why he likes them, any issues he's found as he's gone up in power level, some of the fixes that are out there, his feedback with different types of clutches, and then also building the manual transmissions as well to hold more power. So I'm looking forward to it. Before we get to it, I want to give a shout out to Kershaw Knives. They've got a 40% off MSRP code just for Diesel Podcast listeners. If you go to kershaw.kaiusa.com and use code 40TDP2024, you get 40% off MSRP. It's a great way to save some money, get some cool gear if you need a new EDC knife, something around the job site, house, something for hunting, fishing. They've got you covered with a bunch of different choices for blade steel, blade shape, different opening mechanisms, different handle design, and their whole lineup's designed to meet any budget. So we appreciate them offering that discount code for you guys. If you're in the market, head on over to their website and use code 40TDP2024 for 40% off MSRP. All right, let's get to today's episode, talking about manual diesel trucks, different feedback for clutches, which ones work best for daily driving, and a whole bunch of other topics. Ed, welcome to the Diesel Podcast. I'm looking forward to talking about 6.7 Cummins, and they're very near and dear to my heart. I look forward to learning more about yours, your dad's, and the passion, the excitement you have for them. We've chatted a little bit, but didn't go into too much detail, so looking forward to doing it on the podcast, so welcome.
Thanks. I'm glad to be on.
Tell me how your passion for either Cummins or just your passion for diesel started at the beginning.
Well, I grew up in a 95 12 valve with a 5-speed my dad had. That was his first diesel, and that was my first experience. So kind of got the itch ever since then, especially for the manual transmissions. I remember once when I was a kid, I'm like, can I start the truck? And he didn't think I could do it because it was a manual transmission. So he threw me the keys. I actually did it. I think he freaked out a little afterward. That was pretty funny. But yeah, I just always had the bug. And then he ended up getting a 7.3 in 2000. That was another manual trans 6-speed. And so we're kind of manual transmission guys from the get-go. That ended up being my first truck. Took my license in it and everything. So I was always, mindset, I'll always own a manual transmission. And he'd buy trucks, rack up miles, and then I'd buy them from him.
It's really interesting, the manual side, because I never had one. I've driven them every now and then, and I'm really curious because I want to learn, and I like to see different perspectives. So this was mine. It was a second-gen truck. My brother had it, and he's like, "Hey, can you drive it here for me or something?" I don't remember what he's having done. And I absolutely hated it. I started out in second gear. It's like I knew how to drive one, but I just wasn't used to it. And I think I was just maybe lazy. And I was like, well, I just want to put it in drive and go. But over the years, the last 15 years or so, I've learned how they have very specific benefits, depending how you use them. And also, I would say in a way that you connect to the vehicle in a different way when you're shifting each gear and you're engaging the clutch and you're doing different. It's a much more personal driving experience. What about it for you through all these years has made you stick with and enjoy and gravitate towards a manual transmission truck?
Well, I did get away from them for a little while, and then I'd usually end up regretting it, especially when I had a 68, but yeah, as far as being connected to the transmission, that's 100%. Like when you hit the gas, you feel like it's going. There's no slip. All the power's going through the trans. But it's an experience. Selecting the gear when you need it, when you want it, versus waiting for your transmission to downshift. Like with the 68 truck, they tend to lug pretty low, and then you go to pass somebody, and then finally they downshift. So it's can't beat being in full control, really.
Yeah. I think that's one of the main benefits of it is just having that full control, not having to wait for the downshifts or wait for whatever strategy the factory decided when you upshift, when you downshift, when the converter locks, when it's going to do things, which they've gotten really good, but still the
Yeah.
ability to control it
Yeah.
is
No trans tuning needed.
yeah. How did your ownership, go from that 7.3 into the 6.7 world? Was it really easy to pick a 6.7? Was it something maybe you looked at other brands, or did you know like right away I want a 6.7 Cummins?
So I ended up with the 6.4 for a little while, a Power Stroke. And how I got that was I convinced my dad to buy a 6.7. And that's when we really got rolling and doing modifications and whatnot. That was a second gen swap S467, the intake grid heat delete, torque converter, dual fuelers from ATS, whole 9 yards, 45% over S&S injector nozzles. That's when the 68 was starting to show me it wasn't happy.
Oh yeah, for
But
sure.
that's so naturally when he was ready to sell that, I jumped on it. And then that's how I got back into a Cummins, because Cummins was always near and dear to me growing up in that 95 12 valve. So really just being that we work on everything ourselves and try to keep it simple. And inline six, it's so easy to work on, having to pull the cab off of a 6.4 liter numerous times. That's the biggest thing for me. Can't beat a Cummins sound either.
Yeah, yeah, they're definitely it's definitely easy to get into the engine bay and do things on them. With you had mentioned like you and your dad and your Instagram page, which is where we had chatted first, and I find that there's a lot of stories that when I'm chatting with people, they'll talk about like their dad or their grandfather, and it can be an old Ford OBS, or there is a 6.5 GM, and that's why they stuck and they got a Duramax or a Cummins or something like that. How did the modifications and the upgrades work with you and your dad? Was he always into modifying his truck, and then you kind of followed in his footsteps, or was he keeping them stock and you're like, hey, there's these cool turbo kits and these dual fuelers and all these cool things we could put on it. Let's get you some more power. How did that
So
relationship work with modifying them?
me being in the Instagram age, I see a lot of things, and then I show him put these ideas in his head, and he's got the money to do it. So he's like all in. He's all in, and he's fully capable to do it. So then we jump in on it, and like yeah, put an idea in his head. We could stretch a mega cab. Next thing you know, he's cutting his truck in half. So definitely, definitely, I'm putting the ideas in his head, I'd say. And then now he's kind of the same way. He's online doing his research, finding out what he wants, finding the weak points, and going off of that. But yeah, he's kind of in the I want horsepower mode right now. Got a Freedom Racing head sitting in the shop that needs to go on his truck, and a couple other things, Hamilton cam and whatnot. But yeah, we do quite a bit of towing. I towed my camper a few thousand miles this year, and yeah, same as anybody else for the most part. You want a little bit more power to get moving, get off that entrance ramp onto the highway a little quicker, keep up with the Joneses.
Oh yeah, well, and then there's so much aftermarket support for the 6.7 and Cummins in general, with like you'd mentioned the Freedom Racing Engine's head and cams and turbos. It's really hard once you start. It's so hard to stop because it's like the sky's the limit with things you can do to them,
Yeah.
for them, get them right to the power level and the response level that you want.
Yep. My upgrades are a little bit more responsible lately. Just a few days ago over the weekend, I put a Banks Monster Ram intake horn in there so I can get rid of that troublesome bolt in the intake grid heater. Just did that over the weekend. Really, I'm shooting for longevity and reliability right now. It's anything I'm doing. That same goes with clutches. The stock clutches don't last very long after you start tuning on those G56 trucks. So that's stuff like that. Just keep us rolling down the road.
The clutches I wanted to ask you a bit about, because like I mentioned, I've never owned one. I know a little bit about them, but I think it's different when you own and drive them every day and you're connected to them. What have you found is a really good setup for like a daily driven clutch setup where it can hold that extra power from the air and the fuel and the things that you're doing, but it's still something if you get stuck in traffic, daily driving, it's still comfortable to drive. What's your experience been like?
So going back to what you were saying about your brother's second gen, uh, sometimes you're like, oh man, I just want to put it in drive and go. I, I found back when I had my 7.3, that thing wasn't cranking out much horsepower. So I was able to get away with a single disc clutch. And to me, those are the most enjoyable clutches to drive. Just to go into gear, simple, shift easy. They're great. But once you start putting the power down, then you got to move to a dual disc clutch. And we've had Clutch Masters, I have a Bel Air ceramic right now, and that shifts great. And I mean, I have some complaints too. It's now they got the quiet clutch out. I pull up to a drive through or something like that. You push the clutch in and you hear all that clutch rattle. So I might move it into a quiet clutch in the future. And my dad's got an S&B or South Bend 3250 ceramic organic combo. That is nice because it's not so grabby like my ceramic. That's the other thing. My wife drives manuals. She hates driving my ceramic. You let off the clutch and it's like, kind of got that racy feel. As soon as you let off, jerks you forward if
Yeah.
you're not real careful about how you let off and engage it. But the other thing, yeah, sometimes with the dual disc clutches, they don't just go into first gear. They don't just go into reverse. They get a little bit hot. You go to back up your trailer or something like that, as well as the G56 transmission's geared very high in reverse. So one of the workarounds for that, put it in four-wheel drive low, changes the ratio. And if you're backing up a big, heavy trailer into a tight spot, you can do it a little bit more easy. So my dad took that a step further and he did the lockout hubs on his Dodge. And now we could freewheel spin the front while it's in four-wheel drive low. So it's not so jerky when you're cranking the wheel. But
A lot of good insights because it was like I had mentioned before. I know it was a dual disc yet. I don't remember what kind, but it was just so grabby and so aggressive. And I was like, "How do you drive this every day?" And he just told me to, like, man up and do it. Right? So
yeah,
I was
pretty
like,
much. I drive semis or used to drive semis more often. I still do, but Eaton Fuller 8 speeds. You kind of got to shift them like that, almost like you really got to rev match when you downshift. And yeah, I honestly feel like they're a little bit slower shifting than a single disc. And I know guys, they bang through gears, no problem, but just it doesn't feel as smooth. It's still a fun experience for sure. And you can make the truck make some pretty cool noises when you got a manual transmission too.
do they, as far as the setup, like both the clutches and then the transmission itself, as you've added the power, like the air and the fuel and those kind of upgrades, have they held up really well? Like I'm sure compared to a 68 RFE they do because you hit that spot with a stock one where you just have to buy a built unit pretty
Yep.
quick with the power. But with the manual setup, how has that been long term?
For me, no issues. I'm just running a single turbo leash cheetah. But my dad has an ATS compound setup. I think it's the Aurora 5000. So he's got big bang injectors in there. So tuner said he should be good for about 650 or 750. And he's said that he's felt it slip before. So well, we're kind of at that point. And I think S&B rates it at 650 as well as my clutch at 650 with the Valair setup. Um, they do seem to hold more than what they're rated for. I've even had them kind of clue me in on that. But yeah, once you're at that limit, you're that 650 range. Then I don't know what other clutch options there are. I haven't gotten to that yet, and maybe we're gonna hit that with my dad shortly.
Oh,
Because
I think where you guys are at is really kind of the sweet spot of where a lot of
yeah,
people want. That's where they want the power level because they want that longevity you talked about, where
yeah,
you want to be able to use it every day, drive it, not have to worry about it, but they don't want the stock power levels that came with it. So you're right there in that really kind of popular daily driver all around use truck.
yep, yeah. I'm pretty happy north of 500, and when you get into that 600 range, though, it's really nice towing. That's for sure. I had a second gen couple of years. I sold it like a year ago. Clean grandpa truck and took it on my first trip up north, 300 miles away from home, and my ECU went out on me. Luckily, I was facing downhill towards a boat ramp, so I was able to just roll it right on my dad's trailer. And when he was towing the truck home, I'm like, man, this thing moves quicker than my second gen does empty towing. So when you hit that like 600 plus spot, I think that's the real sweet spot.
Oh yeah. Well,
Sure.
with the trucks themselves, like what year is yours?
Mine's a 15.
Okay. How would you say the Fleece Cheetah compares to stock? Like I've had Fleece on before talking about the benefits of the turbo, what they do with it, but I love to get like just feedback from customers, people out there who have them, especially comparing it to stock because there's so many issues the factory turbo can have. What would you say are the biggest differences between stock and that Cheetah?
Fortunately, I haven't experienced the issues with the stock one yet. Um, with my dad having the stock one underneath the Aurora 5000, but with the Fleece Cheetah, it definitely opens it up top. Definitely got flowing some more air and you feel it up top.
And you still have that quick response like the factory
Yes.
turbo down low.
Yeah, definitely. I would say it's as good as stock. No question about it. I put quite a few miles on my dad's truck. I was working with him years ago, and I put quite a few miles on it. And that stock turbo versus the Cheetah, yeah, it's more more top end, and it 100% I would say has the same bottom end. Very very similar. One of the things I noticed that improved the stock turbo when we had his truck stock, we put a Steed Speed manifold on. That helped it spool up a little bit quicker. I wouldn't mind doing that to my truck shortly here. Help it
Those
a
are
little bit down low.
those are really nice manifolds.
Yeah, yeah, they look pretty good too. Now that I got that Banks on the intake side, I'm like, I gotta do something to freshen up the exhaust side.
I think it's a pretty straightforward install on the intake manifold, but that issue that the factory setup can have with that bolt is so scary.
Yeah, I I think it's a very rare issue. I mean, the trucks have been out since 2007, and I never even heard about that issue until probably a year and a half ago. So I think it's pretty rare, but it was, it's a scary enough thing where I'm like, yeah, you know what? Why not? I better do it. And under my hood, feeling the pin where it could get loose and kind of do the wiggle test or whatever, and all the time, every month or so. And I'm like, now I don't have to worry about it. So
Yeah.
I think just that alone's worth it. As far as the intake horn goes, performance gains pretty slim. If somebody snuck it on your truck overnight, I don't think you'd notice a big difference. But I would say the throttle response is a little crisper
Have
for
there
sure.
been have there been any other parts of the truck either that you've done or you're looking at in the future to address sort of issues like that where you didn't have the bolt drop into the intake plenum, go into the engine, but you thought this is worth the money to spend, so I don't have to worry about it anymore. Are there other parts of the truck you're looking at like that as well?
Yep, 100%. I definitely want to get my fleece coolant bypass on. Just it's kind of tricky to get back there for a freeze plug. So when I take the trans out shortly, I'm going to put an organic clutch in, give that a try. Little we got the clutch masters laying around, so he gave it a shot. I'm going to give it a shot, and while the trans is out, I'm going to do that fleece coolant bypass because 6.7s, I guess, are known for having hot cylinders on 5 and 6. So hopefully, and I sounds like that's part of the reason why head gaskets fail. So I want to get that on there and hopefully get some longevity out of my head gaskets. And yeah, probably before winter hits, I got a box of ARP 2000s laying around, so I'm gonna put those on too. But I fortunately haven't blown a head gasket. I definitely, not nice to the truck, but I could be worse. I especially when I'm towing, I try to be responsible. I don't want to force myself into a head gasket replacement. I'd rather do it on my terms.
Yeah, oh for sure. It's way better to do upgrades when you want to do them versus when you have
Yep.
to do them.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. When I had the 6.4 liter, it was like, oh, nope, another set of head gaskets. Unexpected. All right. Take a whole weekend to get that done.
with with the truck itself, how would you rate it with the upgrades that you've done? Is it something you plan on keeping a really long time, or do you find yourself maybe looking at the 24s and maybe contemplating, a newer truck or something like a different setup, or are you completely happy with the platform, the truck, the things you've done, and the things you have planned in the future?
I'm really happy with the truck. I'm not gonna lie. I did test drive a 2019 Denali, probably like 6 months ago, because some of those newer trucks with features, of course, it's gonna catch your eye, and you had to go check it out and see what the L5P is all about. I owned an LB7 for a short period of time. I was debating having it as a winter beater, try to keep my truck out of the salt. So yeah, I do look at some of the newer trucks, but you know what? After driving one and getting off the lot and getting back in my 6.7, I'm like, yeah, I'm happy with mine. Having all this stuff done and having all the power and not having to go through doing all the work again. I'm planning on keeping my truck for a while. I think I really like the 6.7 platform, especially the fourth gens. Still a little uncertain about the fifth gens. So I'm gonna keep it. And then being that it's a manual trans and they're only gonna get harder and harder to find. And in the back of my head, I grew up in a manual trans truck and took my test in it and everything. And I think it'd be cool if I could keep it as a second truck if I ever do upgrade, pass it down to my son or something someday. Yeah, they're special trucks for sure.
Common question we get from you guys a lot is, hey, I need a diesel engine. I either, I can't wait this long to get one, or normal place I get stuff from it just takes too long, or they don't have the parts in it that I need. Maybe my truck's not stock, or I tow heavy with it. I don't want to go back with just a stock engine. DFC Diesel is a sponsor of the podcast. We worked with them, hand in hand on doing episodes, answering technical questions. They have a complete lineup of Cummins, Duramax, and Power Stroke remanufactured engines that are set to a standard of ISO 9001 2015 standards, which is a huge deal in the aftermarket. And there's certain levels of quality testing, validation that are required for that. So when you get one of those engines, the type of quality that's built behind it with an industry-leading warranty that's really comprehensive. And the other thing with that is, sometimes the options that are out there, it's a basic OEM engine. You want a little bit more. You don't want to have the same failure again. So there's a bunch of different series of engines that they have, from core, street, tow haul, and also the Speed of Air series, which we've covered on the podcast before. There's a lot of really cool benefits to it. And if you have questions about that, reach out to them. If you don't know the type of engine that you're looking for, if you go to dfcdiesel.com, there's a ton of info there. You can send an email or you can reach out to them. Also, they're working with Speed of Air pistons, which it's the only piston that pays for itself. And there's a lot of really cool technology behind it. So you can add that into your build and be able to get better fuel economy, increase power, increase torque, and better engine life out of it. Some of the most common engine applications or series of engines that they have with that lead time, a lot of them are in stock or they have really short lead times. So you can check your favorite retailer or go to dfcdiesel.com, check them out, see what's in stock, see what you can get. If you have questions, maybe you want to do something that's outside of the normal series of engines, they have tons of choices for rods, cranks, pistons, valve train upgrades, tons of different things. So if you're in the market, definitely make sure and head on over and check them out. Yeah, and you're right, because none of the brands offer a manual anymore, so you're all you have to go right into the autos, and there's definitely a part, I'd say a large part of diesel enthusiasts that they want a manual truck. It's really unfortunate that you can't get them anymore, with a manual, which even liking an automatic like I do, I still see the reason for them. I still see the benefit of it, and I guess as a consumer, it kind of sucks that you just can't get them. It's just you're going to get an automatic.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a bit of a bummer that they dropped that, and we had a feeling they were going to drop them in 2019. So that's when my dad bought that 2018, and yeah, sure enough, they got rid of them. I know a lot of people aren't happy about it. I think probably when they did that, it probably opened up the door to other people looking at other brands potentially. A lot of people, only truck you can get with the manual transmissions, a Dodge, you're going to buy it.
Yeah, oh, for sure. And I think they could also have worked the other way as well when they go to all automatics and you go and you're looking at, a 6.7 with a 68 RFE, or am I going to get a Duramax with an Allison, or a Ford with, they have really great stock transmissions. And I know a lot of people that went to other brands at that point because they didn't want to deal with the 68 RFE issues, or they didn't want to spend the money of
Yeah.
what those built automatics cost relatively soon in the like the power upgrade
Yeah.
process. So it definitely changed the market.
Yeah, and the 68 RP is a great transmission as well. We ran that truck, the 2012, up to 265,000 miles and really didn't have a hiccup at all. But I kind of could tell I was getting to that power level where I was going to need to get it built, and to drop 10 grand on it. It just, at the time, I was like, I'd rather spend the 10 grand on an upgrade, get a cleaner truck with the manual transmission in it and not have to worry about it. But yeah, I mean, but even with the G56 though, you're not out of the woods when you're having, when you got the horsepower running through it. So we've already blown up two of them in my dad's truck, blew up third and fourth gears, and then cracked sixth gear another time. So there's still issues you have to work through, but I think for sub 600 horsepower truck, there's really not a whole lot to worry about, especially if you're towing responsibly and then not lugging it in sixth gear. You don't have to worry about that sixth gear issue as much. But yeah, every trans has its issues, that's for sure.
And with the G56, when they break, are there aftermarket upgrades or builds today
Yeah.
that you can get, and what are they? I'm not familiar. I've heard things, just kind of in passing, that there's upgraded hard parts or there's builders out there. But what have you found?
Yeah, we went with super stick transmission, Cody over in Texas. And it's that- that's been good, but not not perfect yet. We're still trying to figure everything out 100%. He's got a set of billet gears he's in the works, and I think we're gonna try to go that route if possible. We're just waiting for him to figure that out. Because there's a lot of talk about whether or not the cases flex or they don't, and some people say some people are dead set that they don't, and that's something my dad actually wants to figure out. He's got an idea in the works, so we're gonna run it, and it's gonna involve indicators under the truck and GoPro. But yeah, Cody, a lot of people swear by Cody over at Super Stick. I've read some good things about long range, and there's people, I think High Gear Transmission makes a heavy duty case. So there's a lot of options. And I still need to do more research on it, honestly, to figure out what route I would go if I had an issue. I'm kind of in the mindset, if I hopefully I don't break it. I don't want to find out. But it is a lot cheaper than getting an automatic built, that's for sure. That's
It,
for sure.
it's so cool that that the aftermarket in diesel will still keep innovating and working on solutions years after either the part or the trucks, aren't they're not current. Like one of the huge ones is 6 liters, and
Yeah.
I've talked about it so many times how for years it was like you didn't want a 6 liter because it was just going to be a money pit.
Yeah.
Versus now the support they have, or like in the Cummins world, it was the G56. Once you got to a certain power level, guys would just start breaking them, and there was really no solution other than I think some would do an NV5600 swap, or they would go to a built 48RE with a controller on it. And
Yep.
now, and the innovation that's taking place, it's so cool, and I love how Diesel does that. Is they don't quit, they don't stop, and they keep looking for solutions. So for these year range trucks that have a G56, there could potentially be solutions as you get up there in power level.
Oh yeah, I do see some high horsepower builds and race trucks with G56 trans, and they're definitely pushing the limits, and I think it's only going to get better from here on out. Like you said, with the 6.0s now 6.0s are maybe more popular than ever.
Yeah.
I think the value of them might be going up a little bit compared to back in the day. My brother-in-law has one with 265,000 miles on it. I keep trying to get him to sell it to me, but he won't. So I want to get my hands into one of those. That'd be fun.
It's been interesting with 6.0s because I think I came into I'd say when I would think of them, I wouldn't in the past had wanted to touch one. I just wouldn't, and just
Yeah.
because of the engine. I think that the truck's great, but I just didn't want to deal with either constant issues or having to figure stuff out. But I think in all the conversations I've had with so many people over the years, they've actually changed my perception where I know what I would need to do. to make it reliable, but where it fits into the market from a price standpoint is so appealing with used vehicle prices, and
Yep.
there are some low mileage ones that are out there that I can see the allure of it. I think it's going to be the same way with 6.7s and what we're talking about with the manual trucks, especially as time goes on and them not being there. There's such a great value, and especially because of the strong aftermarket. And a
Yeah.
lot of it's been strong, kind of from the start, but with what's still taking place, the upgrades, we've talked about turbos, the coolant bypass, the intake manifolds, there's so much available for them. You can really keep them on the road a long time.
Yep. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. A lot of the 2010 to 2012 era 6.7s, they're getting to be more and more affordable. So I think going into the future, that'll be probably a pretty popular platform for people to get into diesels with.
When you look back at your build, would there be anything that you would have done differently? Either like the sequence, or maybe you would have done something sooner, or maybe gone a completely different direction with upgrades, or like any tips for somebody that's looking for like a fourth gen 6.7 that if they kind of want that ultimate daily driver. They want a bit more power, but they're going to be using it every day, where they could take your experience or your advice and say, okay, I'm going to do it like Ed said. I want to go that route, or I don't want to make this mistake. Would there be anything that you would change?
Fortunately for me, not anything major. If I blow my head gaskets tomorrow, then I'll definitely be wishing I would have put those gaskets or the ARPs in sooner, and maybe done the coolant bypass a little bit sooner. Um, Other than that, I think like with clutches, uh, I would prefer not to go full ceramic for daily driving, because dual disc clutch already as it is it's a little bit more cumbersome. It feels like you're driving a semi a little bit more than a single disc clutch, but the ceramic just being that much more jumpy, especially when you're in city traffic and whatnot. I mean, I got to the point where I ended up buying a TDI again. I had a TDI for many years. I just bought a 2013 just to daily it. I get sick of shifting. Like anybody else, it just gets a little old. Sometimes you're towing, you're going and doing a 300-mile trip up north hauling the camper. It's the greatest thing in the world. And then you get into a busy town and tight parking spots and this and that with the jumpy clutch. You're like, oh man, get me out of here. uh, so yeah,
Would
clutch. I think picking a good clutch right off the bat would, going with an organic, maybe I'd be a little bit happier.
would there be anything that on your dad's truck and his build process that you think he would change, or did he spend a lot of, or did you guys spend a lot of time doing the research and kind of ironing it out firsthand, where you wouldn't change anything about it?
If Cody would have had those billet gears available when we sent the trans out the first time, that would have been probably the biggest thing, or maybe waiting a little longer to get it done until we could have got those billet gears. I think that would be the biggest one for his build. Other than that, I mean, I've had really good luck with these 6.7 clutch, 6.7 trucks in general. Between me and my dad, I think we got probably 500,000 miles on them, and they've been so reliable. I could diagnose a 6 liter quicker because I've had to help buddies work on them, and diagnosing a 6.7. I don't know a whole lot about it because I haven't had any problems. They've been good.
The with the different turbo setup, that's something I'm curious about. Is like with the compound setup, would you go that route in the future on your truck? Would you do
Yeah.
compounds?
Yep. Yeah, I guess that's something that I could speak on for sure, because I ran my 2012 with an S467 second gen setup, the fixed vane turbo, and that's a lot of fun. And when it hits, it hits, and it's fun. But towing and just especially with those 68 RFEs, how they lug so bad, and then when they finally downshift and then they go kind of bogging out a little bit with that turbo. And when my dad had put the compounds on, like this is great. I'm getting older now too, so just you have that second turbo on, it's like a second muffler. It kind of quiets the truck out, smooths it
Yeah.
out a little bit, makes it feel a little bit more like a V8 diesel in that sense a little bit. So yeah, I would definitely go to the compound route. Just it's kind of pricier, I guess, but it's worth it. I would recommend if you can make that happen, do a compound setup.
It's really funny you mention that because I mean I'm older too, and I think back to being younger. I wanted a 5-inch straight pipe, no muffler. I wanted to feel the door panels rattle. I wanted to
Yep.
hear everything about it. But as I got older, a lot of it changed, and it's been a really sort of interesting process because when I was younger, and the older guys would say, "Well, I want it quiet. Why don't you put a muffler on it? Why do you like it like this?" I just
Yep.
thought they were like boomers and stuff, right? So I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't want that. But then you kind of get to that point yourself where you're like, I want the power, but I want to be able to like have a conversation in the truck or
Yeah.
be able to listen to whatever I'm listening to. But you still want the power. You still want the performance and the torque,
Yep.
and it's interesting how you can do both. You don't have to have just like a boring stock truck.
Yeah.
You can have compound turbos and upgraded injectors and a twin CP3 kit and all the goodies, but still be able to have it fun and comfortable for a daily driver.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I got kids now, and there's times I'm getting on the highway with the trailer on and feel like I'm blowing their ears out in the back seat, and I'm like, yeah, I got to put a muffler on. Yeah. It's not going to affect the performance really. So it's like I'm getting to that point where I might do it. That's one of the allures of the newer trucks too. They're just so much smoother.
Yeah.
And same with 6.7 versus 24 valve, just smoother operating engine. It's nice.
With being that you've had experience with a bunch of different generations of Cummins trucks, and for somebody that doesn't have one, they want to get one. They do want to modify it. They don't want to go crazy and have a race truck or anything like that, but they want something that's fun to daily drive. They're going to tow. Would you have them look towards a particular generation as far as like aftermarket support and parts and the ease of getting there versus others? Or would you say that they all can be that depending on how much you want to spend and when you want to spend it? I think they all pretty much kind of fall in line to the same price that you're going to spend to
Yeah.
get to 600 horsepower. It's just what are you going to do first? But do
Yeah.
you have, is there one of the generations you like the best?
Definitely for me, being a family guy now, I got to say the fourth gen having that bigger cab is really important. Um, I oftentimes think like, oh man, with all the emissions equipment nowadays and whatnot, just the simplicity of having an older truck, I would probably go with a third gen, not have to worry about it. You still got a big enough back seat where you can slam the kids back there and the family dog, and you're kind of good to go. So, I mean, I've got buddies that ask me, and I'm like, well, depends on what you want to do, what you want to spend. But, third gen, I think, is probably a pretty good platform because then you still get that common rail injection, pretty smooth running motor, and the tuning available for it is is awesome. It's but definitely, I feel like better tuning options than maybe on a second gen 24 valve truck.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think that would be the one, depending on the goals, that would
Yeah,
definitely be one to kind of focus in on. As
like
far as like with the trucks themselves and working on them, I think you'd mentioned when we were chatting beforehand a little bit, you guys working on them yourselves and doing as much as you can. What has that been hard or like was it fun? Say if you guys didn't know how to do something, just kind of learning on your own, or were there resources or places that you guys found a lot of good information to be able to either install something, diagnose? I think you'd mentioned with the case flex on the G56. What's the process been like for working on them?
oh, I'm definitely I joke, I say I'm a YouTube mechanic. There's so many resources out there, so many people that have done it, especially with diesel, because it just seems like in the diesel world, there's typically people that like to do things themselves, and you get on the forums and read things and what people have tried, and yeah, that's the biggest thing for me. And my dad being a mechanic and all that, he's just not afraid to dig into things. So when we blew up the 6.4 liter head gaskets the first time, we just tore into it and did it, and it's always worked out. And just really the biggest thing when you're working on something yourself is cleanliness, and attention to detail. Take pictures before you take it apart so you put it together the same way. And yeah, getting online and finding those torque specs or getting the manual so everything's going together the correct way.
I think
I mean, that's one thing I appreciate about working on my truck myself too, is like I feel like I'm gonna be more cleanly than anybody else I'm paying to do it,
yeah,
make sure dirt's not falling in my cylinder or whatever.
yeah. I think that's really good advice, and you get to learn so much. about the
Yeah.
truck itself. And as it gets older, you put more miles on it, you can be self-reliant in so many ways with it
Yeah.
and be able to tackle those repairs, save some money. But then what you mentioned with, like, the job's done right because you did it yourself. It might have taken a little bit longer, might have,
Yeah.
taken some nights and weekends and things like that to do it, but you
Yep.
know exactly how it was done.
Yep. Yeah, I just got done watching Josh McCormick's video. He recently put one of those intake horns on. That kind of inspired me. I'm like, you know what? I gotta get it done. And he's saying in the video, he's like, I think I could usually do this job in like 1.5, 2 hours. And by the time I'm done, like, ooh, double the time. But I didn't have to take it anywhere, so it's all good. And I have a good time. And that's kind of part of the reason why I like diesel so much is just I enjoy working on them, and then I feel connected to the truck when I do the work myself. Like just buying the truck and changing all the fluids in the differential, the trans, the transfer case, everything. That's fun for me. Knowing what's in it, knowing everything's ready to go, trying not to have any issues, just be proactive and looking into things that save you down the road.
Yeah, and well, I think also too, like doing an Instagram page like you have, you're able to you're able to take your experience and your knowledge and what you're doing with them, and then be able to connect it to other people, and you're able to expand that knowledge and experience to someone who might not have it, which can be one of the toughest parts of wanting to modify a truck or build it or do things if you're not extremely familiar with all the mechanical sides of it. Is where do I find the information? Is it good information? What people have done something similar that I want to do? Are they
Yeah.
happy with the setup? Would they change anything about it? It's really cool how social media has allowed all of us to connect in different ways, with these trucks and the things we're doing to them.
Yeah, it's social media is great for that. I mean, I've reached out to guys in the industry and asked them questions and just sort of help me even picking ARP studs. Do I want to spend $1,200 on the 625s, or can I get away with the 2000s for $500? And I was able to get that information just by reaching out and talking to people in the industry that have the knowledge, and you might save a buck and not spend extra money you don't need to spend, depending on your build goals. So it's definitely a good community, and there's a lot of information out there. Just got to be willing to get out there and ask questions and research. And yeah, it's been fun. It's been a fun run.
It was definitely cool checking out your page, and I appreciate you reaching out to us. I do want to get Cody on the podcast. I think he recently moved shops, or is in the process, or maybe
Yeah, sounds like
just
he's moving to Tennessee.
yeah.
We've been in touch with him, like patiently waiting for those billet gears, and hopefully something will turn out soon. But that'd be a really cool transmission episode. He'd have a lot of good information.
Yeah, I definitely want to get him on it, and I appreciate you suggesting that. And it's cool in talking a little bit and hearing what you did with your truck and your dad did with his. And I was like, this would just be a cool conversation to have because I love 6.7s. But then a lot of people that listen to the podcast, they're looking for something that's newer and kind of in that same thing you mentioned where they test drive that L5P, or maybe it's an LML, or it's a
Yeah.
6.7 or 6.7 Power Stroke, and they just want to, well, what can I do, or what people have, how happy have they been with their truck? And instead of me just like talking about it, which I don't have experience, I haven't done what you've done with a 2015. Just having you on to talk about it, and auto or manual, what are the options that are out there? So it was really cool chatting with you today, Ed. I appreciate it. If people want to follow you and check out what you're doing, maybe they have questions, maybe they want to know more about something with either truck, how can they find you on Instagram?
My Instagram handle is double Ed Diesel. I think it's let me look really quick. I got to get back on my page. The kids have kind of taken over my life here. Double underscore Ed underscore Diesel. Yeah, I started the page with the intentions of posting a lot more information about my dad's truck, because we were in the middle doing that mega cab stretch to a long bed, and kept up on it for a while and just kind of let it fall by the wayside. But I got to get back on it. Finally posted some stuff the other day, and I got some more stuff to post. Got some cool stuff coming up before winter for sure.
Very cool. Well, I appreciate your time today chatting with me. You let me ask you a bunch of a bunch of questions about 6.7s, what you guys have done, and keep me updated on the billet gears and the process, for it. And I appreciate the information, especially about clutches, because people have questions about them. They want to know what people like to daily drive, what are the pros and cons of different setups, and
Yeah.
it was really cool chatting with you, and I appreciate you reaching out.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. I had a good time. Love the show, man. Keep it up.
Don't forget, Diesel fans, make sure and head on over to Kershaw.kaiusa.com. Use code 40 TDP 2024 for 40% off MSRP. It's a great way to save some money, get some really cool gear if you're in the market for a knife for EDC, hunting, fishing, something around the job site, around the house. They've got you covered with a complete lineup of knives. Design it to meet any budget. We appreciate Kershaw Knives offering that discount code just for you guys to save some money and get some really cool gear. Also, if you're watching this on YouTube and aren't subscribed, make sure and click the subscribe button, like, comment, listeners think about the episode. Also, make sure and turn on notifications so that you're able to get the latest information on diesel truck parts, new trucks, different tips, news with emissions, anything pertaining to diesel trucks. That's the best way to be notified first, and make sure that you get the information to make informed decisions. Also want to give a shout out to some of our Patreon supporters: Tyler Loewen of 23 Diesel, J Cole, CUTTERUP, Rob, Colby, all of our other Patreon supporters, all of you who subscribe on YouTube and podcast apps, follow us on social media. We appreciate all your support here in year 8 of the Diesel podcast, and look forward to bringing you guys more of the content that you want to hear in 2024. Till next time, keep the shiny side up.